Hi babes, and welcome back to Lexi Yaps, Car Edition. If you don't know me, I'm Lexi, and I talk about all things film. Come here. Have you ever had a worm bite you? Well, Phil here has. Today we're going to be talking about a short film called Dirt Cheap by Buddy Brewer. So the film fades in, and this little worm comes on in and lands right in front of a man in a suit. Let's call him Phil. The worm is dancing, it's having a grand old time, living life, he's loving it, whatever, yada, 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 and then BAM! Sorry, that was a lot. Phil smushes him. Phil smushes the worm, so already off to a crazy start. It cuts to Phil smiling before then frowning again, almost like he's afraid that he got caught enjoying himself, which is gross. So he takes the dead worm and he squeezes out its contents, which is like this weird goo, and then he puts it in a bottle. Well, he throws the worm away and then he puts it in this spray bottle, sprays it on himself, and is like, ooh, this is nice. Oh, it's not quite what I want. And so he brings in another worm. Only this time the worm is scared because it literally just saw another worm get crushed to death and thrown aside. I would be scared too. So Phil tries to crush the worm over and over and over again, the worm dodging left and right and everything, and then he goes in and bites Phil. So in a fit of rage, Phil takes the worm, chucks it out a window, it lands on the ground, and we assume it dies, but then it starts wiggling again after a few seconds, and then it's like, ooh, I'm outside, ooh, fuck the world, I'm out of here. So the whole film is very short. It only has about 3 minutes runtime, and about 2 of those minutes are the actual plot of the story. So it really only has a few components in the film. We have the man in the suit, the 2 worms, the puppeteer, the plate, and the perfume bottle. So the first thing that caught my eye, well, ear, is the Southern music choice. And I'm not really big into Southern music, and I don't really lean towards it whenever I'm editing and trying to add music. That's just not something I lean towards. Well, it could just be a fun choice. I associate Southern with conservatism. And hear me out, like, it's... hang on. Now, I'm not saying that Southern music is conservative by any means, but that's just where my brain goes. That's where I associate it with. And so it's conservative and animal cruelty testing. Kind of see what I'm saying here? If the corporate man was more in a Southern environment, I wouldn't really bat an eye just because it is part of the environment. However, it is a very specific choice because we don't see anything that leans Southern. You know what I mean? I correlate conservatism to animal testing because there's a lot less regulations within the conservative community, and they're not a big fan of regulations, especially when it comes to testing medical products. Let me be very clear. I do not agree with animal testing at all. Full stop. I understand when it's necessary, but I still do not agree with it. So the worm signifies the animals in the animal testing industry, and Phil, obviously, is the corporate asshole. So when I first saw this film, I actually really appreciated the creative direction that the director took, because I don't see puppeteers like ever. And because this is a short film, emphasis on short, it's 3 minutes long. Because it is a short film, every choice made is so important. Everything has a purpose. Everything is being added or subtracted for a reason. If there's not a reason, then you should be reevaluating. I actually spoke with the director of the film very briefly, and he said he was actually going to be masking out the hands that were puppeteering the worm. And I'm so glad he didn't do that, because it just adds so much, because there are so many like animal testing films. Like there's this one, okay, this is side tangent. Do you guys remember the really, really unsettling animal cruelty, animal testing short film that happened? It was like an animated stop motion thing, almost like a Fantastic Mr. Fox kind of vibe. And oh my God, it scared the shit out of me as a kid. Like, I was so scared, but I loved the message, but it was so creepy. I see the hands as a sort of symbolism, because in the very beginning, the worm is being puppeteered and everything by the hands. And at the very end, the worm is dancing freely with no strings attached, with no hands. Strings to touch because it's a puppet. Animals are forced and trained to act certain ways, hence the hands puppeteering the worm. But at the very end of the film, when the worm doesn't have hands puppeteering him anymore, he's free. The worm is free because it was thrown out of a fucking window. Another choice I really enjoyed from the director was whenever we looked at Phil, it was a shot where the camera was looking up at him, showing a clear power dynamic because it's a worm versus a corporate person. And when the second worm came in, we see Phil's face, and I swear I see the actor's lip twitch. And it looked like it was out of like an anger kind of thing. And I don't know if that was intentional or not, but if it was, ooh, good job. And if it wasn't, incredible job to the actor. Whether it was intentional or not, the character shows no concern for the worm because he doesn't care about what happens. He cares about what is put into the bottle. Phil actively notices that the worm is shaking, and while it does hesitate a bit between the two camera angles of looking at Phil versus looking at the worm, it shows a very clear hesitancy. And I do think that was intentional, but I don't think it works with the character just because we don't see him elevated in any sort of way. Go away. I want to go away. Sorry. Another thing to note is that there are posters behind Phil, and while we never really get a good angle of the posters, which I do think is a bit of a directing choice that I would show more, either show it or take it away. That's just me because it is a short film, but I digress. We never get a good look at the poster, but it does have worms on them, and it says something along the lines of something something worm something something harvest today. So that is the only issue I have with this film. However, every choice has a purpose, so I'm holding out hope that there is something there with that. So at the end of the film, the worm is chucked out the window and it lands on the concrete, which I assume it fell several stories, and it still survived. And to quote Jeff Goldblum, life finds a way. I mean, that and worms just don't die even if you chop them in half. So that's a whole other thing. So I originally had been searching for short films on YouTube or just on social media, but then I ran into a community online. I found it while I was looking for short films, and this was all happening around the time of A24's backlash with all of the AI stuff and everything, which I am firmly against AI. If you like AI, get out of here. So this community supports small creators and actually comes together within the community, and they do all sorts of script edits and critiques. And I've even been to a community event where we actually watched a bunch of screenings of people's short films, and we complimented them, we critiqued them. Oh my gosh, it was so much fun. And these are people who make short films with their phones. Like, we have people who are producers, and then we have people who are just everyday Joes, like myself. Learning more about people who are in my same boat, and they even have like different sub-threads for different different communities, like Chicago area or Indianapolis area or fucking like Australia, like stuff like that. It still is in the early stages of being built. However, oh my gosh, do I see a future with it. I mean, there is so much potential here. So if you are interested, please feel free to join. The link is in the comments or in the banner. We would love to have you, and it's so much fun. Overall, I think this was a really fun short film, and something that I will take to my grave is that people, including myself, often think that you need a big budget and a big crew to make a short film or to make a film, but you really don't. There was only a handful or so of people who actually worked on this film, and it came out pretty freaking well. Even now, I still have a crutch on myself because I'm so worried about making and creating something that doesn't turn into anything, and so then I just don't make it all together. So this is literally showing me that I do not need a crew and $1,000 million to make a film, you know what I'm saying? But I have been changing that habit, so be sure to follow and subscribe because ooh, do I have something cooking up for you. All right, babes, that's it for today. And I know this was a short one, but I had a lot of fun analyzing this film because it had no dialogue. So it gave me a lot of creative freedom. Be sure to check out my TikTok accounts, Camino Forge and Lexi Yaps and Chats, for more day-to-day content. And you have to subscribe. It's the law.
The Lexi Law.
Anyways, I will see you guys next Friday.
Bye.